We live? We live? All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Wars in the Stars, episode 33, I believe. Or actually, excuse me, this is episode one of our movie reviews. I got that mixed up. So, welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to talk about Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings. This will be a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the movie, I highly suggest you go and see it and check out mine and other content creators' videos about Shang-Chi because I can't wait to talk about this movie with you guys. Now, if you are not new to the podcast, you should know that me and my good friend Alex do this podcast together. But recently, Alex has told me that he wants to take a little bit of a break. That's really all I'm going to say about that. He doesn't know when he's going to come back. Um, but I send my best wishes to Alex. I can't wait for him to get back and for us to discuss all these great projects coming out here soon. But without further ado, I kind of want to get into Shang-Chi. So I took some notes, and the first thing I wanted to talk about was just my overall general thoughts on Shang-Chi. Now, I went and saw this movie Friday night in a full theater, which was great. We'll talk about the box office a little bit later, but it was great to be in a full theater with people. Um, I missed it. It was just a great theater. Everyone laughed at the jokes. Uh, Everybody was into it, and it seemed like people really enjoyed it coming out of the theater. So, to get into my general thoughts, I really enjoyed this film. I think this film is fantastic. Coming out of the theater, I thought this was probably a bottom of the top 10 MCU, so it fits in that 9 or 10 spot. I think it's better than movies like Iron Man, Captain America, The First Avenger, Age of Ultron, Ant-Man. All of those middle of the pack movies, it's better, but it's not as good as something like Endgame, Civil War, The First Avengers, or Ragnarok. Um, it's at my number 9 spot currently. I have a hard time ranking the MCU since it's so big and fast. But right now, it's at my number 9 spot. By this time next year, will it be in the top 10? Probably not, but that doesn't discredit how good this movie was. We're getting so much other stuff that I'm looking forward to. But this movie was fantastic. I just can't rave about it enough. I thought the world building was great. Ta Lo, I believe, is the town. I can't. I'm sorry if I forgot the town that we see at the end of Shun-Chi, the mythical dimension, was fantastic. Something I really enjoy about Black Panther is the world building, but it's not fully there. It's more focused on T'Challa and that family. But this movie does focus on family a lot. It's a family movie, but it also does a fantastic job of giving me a mythological story. I felt like I was watching a fairy tale set in the MCU, and I absolutely loved it. I love the mythical creatures. I love the dragons. I love that fight. I love the mythical and cultural aspects that this film had. It really builds. I'm going to compare this movie a lot to Black Panther because it both their own ways they were monumental, not just to the MCU but for cultural reasons. Um, and this movie just does a great job of expanding the lore, expanding the mythos of Shun-Chi's universe, which was my biggest takeaway. I was blown away by that third act. Um, and I also thought the first act was very strong. The first act does a fantastic job of showing us again Shun-Chi where he's been, shows the Mandarin and his wife, Shun-Chi's mom, introduces us to Ta Lo, introduces us to the Mandarin's ideology, and also introduces us to Shun-Chi and Katie, his best friend, who I thought Aquafina was great in this movie. I thought she was really funny. I hope to see more of her. But the first act is really strong. It has a lot of action. It has a great soundtrack too, like Black Panther. I has one of the better soundtracks I think in the MCU. I love that fight scene on the bus with Razor Fist. I also love the fight that they have in the club, the fighting arena. So I thought that was some really strong things in Act One. I will say that my big criticism, or my only criticism I have, is the second act feels a little slow to me, especially after we get to Tao Lo. It's a lot of expository stuff. I don't mind it. There's some really good character building moments. I love the scene where Shang-Chi is like, "I'm gonna be what my dad taught me to be, a killer," and then obviously later in the film, he becomes, more like his mother, passive, defensive, fights what for what she really believes in, not out of emotion. Shunchi very much uh, embodies the story of Luke Skywalker just in one movie. Like very reminiscent of Luke in Return of the Jedi when he fights with all of his rage and then he looks down at the glove and then he's more passive and he becomes a Jedi essentially. So that's how I view Shang-Chi's story. And I thought, yeah, the second act was slow, but once you got into the third act, it was good. The second act, a little slow for me when you compare it to the first and third. The middle part of the film was, it wasn't bad, but it's just compared to the rest of the film, it wasn't as good. Um, yeah, and then finally, I think the Mandarin is a top 5 MCU villain. But when I was thinking about it, I'm like, he's definitely top 10. And then when I thought about him more, I'm like, yeah, he's top 5. He really is a top 5 MCU villain. There are 3 fundamental things I look for in a villain. How scary are they? How fearful are they to our main protagonist? Uh, Tony Leon killed it as the Mandarin, and I was very frightened of the Mandarin. I love how he utilizes the reins. By the way, that's another thing I want to get into before I get too deep into the Mandarin. I loved how they utilized the 10 reins. The 10 reins in the comics were actual reins that look too much like the Infinity Stones. I like how they're almost like bracelets now, and I love how you can shoot like energy out of them, like you could throw them at people. Like they're very powerful, probably one of the more powerful artifacts that we see in the MCU. I mean, they make you eternal, like the Shang-Chi's dad, the Mandarin lived for thousands of years, and presumably now Shun-Chi, if he really wanted to, could live for thousands of years. But the Mandarin was badass, and I always felt intimidated when he was on screen. I know he was a driving force. His relationship to the main hero. That's one thing I definitely look for in a villain. And I think his father-son relationship was fantastic. The son, like, doesn't believe the father. And, I love what they do in this movie with the flashbacks. They don't overtly say it. It's hinted at because they know the audience is smart enough to get it. They show Shang-Chi's perspective. We think, oh, he was tortured. He was forced to fight. His dad saw it as him uh, being kind and doing the right thing almost, training him to avenge his mother. He thought he was doing the right thing. So it's definitely somewhere in the middle, right? That we have to think about it. He wasn't fully tortured. He probably was. He was forced to do a lot of this stuff, but the Mandarin believed it was for the right cause to revenge Shun-Chi's mother. We don't get the context in the first flashback with Shun-Chi that his first mission was to kill the man that killed his mother. He does succeed at it, but he runs away because he feels ashamed. You don't kill an innocent man, I guess you would say, but they're not really innocent. You just wouldn't harm. Blood for blood, that doesn't help you at all. So yeah, overall, he was really strong villain. And the last thing I really want from a villain is understanding his motives. Totally understood his motives. I'd like he wanted to get his wife back. He didn't know about the dwellers. Like he didn't know about that at all. He was manipulated. His whole quest for power was because of the loss of somebody. He took the 10 rings off. Uh, he's almost an anti-villain, I guess you would say. He's not a full-on villain, but we understand his motives. We understand that the grief has caused him to become what he was before. He believed if he was that ruler and conqueror, that would have never happened to Shun-Chi's mom. So we understand his motives, understand his rationale. He hears the mother's voice, and I love the symbolism at the end of the movie. I'll get into it more. But overall, my general thoughts, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. And it sits in ninth place right now out of 26 MCU movies. So that's fantastic. That's really good. Now, by the end of the year, will it be in the top 10 still? Maybe not. We're getting the Eternals and Spider-Man No Way Home. Those two could very easily overtake this film. So, and that's not to, say that this was a bad movie. It's just like the MCU has a lot of good projects. So if Shang-Chi's not in the top 10 by the end of next year, that's doesn't mean it was a bad film. It just means that the MCU is continually improving all of the time. So the next topic I want to get into is the box office. Now, Alex and I did a prediction video on last Wednesday. And both of us generally thought that it was going to perform, well, by the MCU standards, poorly, by pandemic standards, middle of the pack, or pretty well, especially with the Delta. But this movie exceeded everyone's expectations. I'm going to pull up this article from Variety talking about the box office. It shatters records, and this movie shattered records for Labor Day in the middle of a pandemic. Shunchi, it says here, Shunchi and the Legend of the Ten Rings delivered the sizzle that struggling movie theaters so desperately needed. Debuted to 71.4 million in its inaugural weekend. The Marvel adventure is on pace to rack up a mighty 83.5 million over the 4-day Labor Day weekend, trumping expectations that had anticipated a debut of between 45 million to 50 million, while also shattered barriers for Asian representation on screen. The film's 3-day figure is the second best of the pandemic era, falling just behind Black Widow at 80.3 million, and edging out F9's 70 million bow. Okay, so let's talk about how it's not really fair to compare this movie to Black Widow. Scarlett Johansson, obviously, popular actor. Pandemic was different. We were somewhat coming out of it. It seemed like Delta wasn't the prevalent issue in America at that time. The movie came out in July, and it took a big dip the second weekend. And that's another thing I want to get into is if this movie drops less than 50% at the box office, it has a chance to make more than Black Widow. Black Widow dropped 70% second weekend. And, obviously there's a lawsuit with Scarlett Johansson and Disney. And if this movie doesn't drop to 70%, she's got a case that it was because of streaming that it didn't make a lot of money in the movie theaters. So a lot rides on the second weekend. Because if this movie has legs, it's a good sign to movie theaters who needed a good sign that streaming wasn't going to take over. So it would be great if this movie only drops like 35 to 40%. That's fantastic. If it drops less than 50%, that's really good. That's a fantastic sign. I think Free Guy dropped about 50%. And that was really good as well. So it had decent legs. If this only drops 50% like Free Guy, and I think it has a good chance of doing that with all the positive press, people seeing it, people enjoying it. I think it's a really good sign for, obviously, Venom moved up today. So Sony saw the data and is like, yeah, we can release it. People will go and watch. We'll make a pretty penny on it. You won't make pre-pandemic numbers, but studios have to realize they're not going to make pre-pandemic numbers for a while. So if they could get Venom could get 50, 60 million opening weekend, that's good for them. So the box office was absolutely impressive, 71.4 million, still 10 million behind Black Widow, but I think it has a chance to catch it in the second weekend, because I don't think it's going to take as big as a dip at all, mostly because the movie is better, at least in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions. It's your preference. Has great ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, every single scoring website. It's just word of mouth. People haven't been to a movie theater in probably a year and a half. Some people were like, Black Widow, don't care. Suicide Squad wasn't really marketed. So this is the first real big movie um, that has come out since the pandy. So I could very well see Shang-Chi dropping less than 50% would be massive for movie theaters and for Marvel. It would tell them a lot. And I think Eternals is safe now. A lot was riding on this opening weekend, and Shang-Chi smashed expectations. It smashed my expectations. So the box office, very good side for MCU. So many movies moving forward, just movies in general, movie theaters in general. So the third thing I have on my list to talk about was where I rank this movie in Phase 4. So all the Phase 4 projects, WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, Black Widow, What If, and obviously Shang-Chi. Um, I think this is the second best thing to come out of Phase 4 behind Loki. And I might be a little bit biased towards the character of Loki. He's my favorite MCU character. I just like the story of Loki overall better. I just like the character better. I have more of a connection to him. I like him more. That's nothing against Simu Liu. I love him as Shang-Chi, one of the best protagonists we have in the MCU. But I just have more of a connection to Loki. I like the story better. I like what it sets up better. Um, so yeah, but it's not like Loki is in all of the MCU's projects. Loki is probably more towards like Civil War, a first Avengers on my level, and Shang-Chi is a little bit after that. It's not like that's a big wide margin. It's really close to me, but I think I just enjoy Loki overall more than I do Shang-Chi. Um, yeah, Shang-Chi is very clearly better than WandaVision, in my opinion. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Black Widow, but I don't want to compare them because those projects are totally different. I just think overall, from a quality standpoint, a storytelling standpoint, I would much rather watch Shang-Chi than the majority of Phase 4 so far. Not to say the rest of Phase 4 is bad, I just think Shang-Chi is substantially better than 3 through like 6. But 1 and 2, Loki and Shang-Chi are definitely top tier MCU. Not top tier, but top tier. Very solid stuff. I think everyone will enjoy. And then in that same question, uh, how do I rank it in the MCU? So my MCU, the top tier stuff for me, the top 4 is top tier for me. That would be, this fluctuates, the top 4: Infinity War, Black Panther, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Winter Soldier. And then it goes the first Avengers, Ragnarok, Endgame, Civil War, Shang-Chi, and probably Iron Man. That's like the first 4 are great. The next 6 are really, really good. Really good. The first Avenger, Far From Home, like Homecoming, Age of Ultron, good. Doctor Strange, good. Black Widow, good. Iron Man 3, good. Ant-Man, good. And then like the rest are like okay or bad. So like Shang-Chi is in the really good category. And I think it's going to stay there. Again, some of the reasons for that, like I alluded to earlier, the villain, the story, the mythological aspect of the story, the cultural aspect, and the power set. The 10 Rings were really, really interesting. I'll get into when I get into the more spoilery parts of this. We're going to talk about the 10 Rings, where I think they rank them on like power sets for the MCU. So that's where I rank Shun-Chi in Phase 4 and in the MCU. So Alex and I, when we did our preview last Wednesday, we did a little prediction thing. I had 15 predictions. I'm going to do this for every movie. I'll do it for Venom when that comes out October the 1st. And we'll do it for Eternals and so on. So here were the 15 questions. So the first question was, what are you most excited for? I said, explored a new world. And I think it blew my expectations away. I think Tao Lo and just Shun-Chi's world in general was the coolest thing. It was very interesting, and it's something I want to see more of. whether that be in a Shang-Chi sequel or in the rest of the MCU. It's a whole nother dimension. It felt like a fairy tale story. It felt like a religious movie, like a religion movie. Um, and I just loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Somebody on Twitter posted about the mythological creatures that were in it from Chinese culture. I thought that was great. I just love learning about different cultures and mythos, and it didn't feel MCU to me. I did feel, I should say, conventional MCU to me, which I liked, but it also felt like it was in the MCU at the same time, even though it was just a different part of the universe. My second question was, what are your concerns for this movie? I said nobody was going to watch it. I was concerned about the box office and people would forget about it. I was wrong. It made 71 million. I was on the high end of what predictions said, which was 50. So I was blown away that it made 71.4 million. And it had really strong legs on Saturday too, which is a good sign. It made 8.8, I think, on um, Thursday night, preview night. Black Widow made 13. It had a decent Friday. I think it was at like 30. I think it was at like 30 million after 2 nights, and it had a really strong Saturday. So thumbs up for that for Shun-Chi. And I also said that this might be the start of a superhero fatigue. I think I'm wrong. I think that Shun-Chi got the most audience it could. It overperformed, way overperformed. So people are interested in superhero movies still. Uh, I'm curious to see how Venom does. They need to start marketing that movie now. And I'm curious to see how Eternals does after this. So it's definitely not the start of a superhero fatigue. I think it may happen here soon where people are like, I'm not going to see Doctor Strange. I want to see Thor. I know who that is. Or, I don't want to see the Marvels. I want to see Black Panther. Like people just pick and choose and they don't want to see all of them, which is understandable because the MCU is ginormous now. I mean, you think about it, there were what, like 23, 24 movies building up to one climactic story event. Now there's going to be 40 projects in total in 40 years of time. Probably in 2025, I think we're going to get something big, like something endgame level big, because of how much stuff we get a year. You don't need 10 years to develop this all out now. You need 3 or 4. But you have to watch everything. And there's like 10 things you got to watch now. So I think it might be a start of a superhero fatigue. Um, but just not now. Maybe next year. I mean, we get so much when it comes to Star Wars, when it comes to DC, and when it comes to Marvel. So we'll see. I thought this might be the start of it. People just picking and choosing what they want to see, and not going to see the whole MCU to understand it. But I'm still really curious about that. We're gonna have to wait and see when these other superhero movies come out at the end of the year. My third question was, will Shang-Chi make more than the Incredible Hulk's, 55 million? It did. It smashed it. It made 71.4 million. It probably is still in the bottom 5 grossing MCU films opening weekend. Let me look that up real quick so I'm not spewing nonsense. Um, but yeah, Shang-Chi made 71. Well, it's just Endgame made like more than almost a half a billion just opening weekend. We'll never see that again. Um, yeah, it looks like it's in the bottom 5. Yeah, yeah, it is in the bottom 5. Uh-huh. Yeah, well, again, pre-pandemic, it probably makes more because the MC was on such a hot streak, but it's not bad. It's not bad. It's not what the MC was used to seeing, but they got to do what they got to do. So it's not, you know, sometimes, things happen. And we got a crazy world going on right now. So it's not going to make as much as it should. Um, yeah, but it did make more. How much will Shang-Chi make opening weekend? I said 50. Again, it made 71.4 million, 20 million over. Smashed. Absolutely smashed. Box office projections. Good news. And To be fair, this movie had fantastic marketing on my TV all the time when I'm watching sports. It's on YouTube all the time. It was my ads. They did a fantastic job pushing this movie. I hope Sony learns to do that with Venom. They probably won't. But they went hard. They want to make sure people saw it. I spent a good amount of money, way more than they did for Black Widow. So I'm really happy that they did that and they got eyeballs to see this film. Will there be references to the Avengers? Yeah, there was. There was a reference to Iron Man. It seems like a trend that every Phase 4 project's just going to mention Iron Man. Wanda, obviously, we had the Stark Bomb. Falcon the Winter Soldier, I don't believe there was an overt or a very apparent reference to Stark. I'm not sure. Um, Loki, two Tony Starks. Loki talking about how he could smell the cologne of two Tony Starks. Black Widow, there was a couple of references. That movie just like every 5 seconds they had to tell you that the Avengers are around during this time period. They're around. Just during Civil, they're around. They're happening. They mentioned that's one of the problems I have with that movie. It's just why? Just focus on Natasha. Will we see the fake Mandarin known as Trevor Slattery, and will he die? Well, no, he's still an actor. Um, and I thought they utilized him perfectly. I didn't get into that earlier, but I really loved him in this film. He wasn't over the top. He was funny. He understood a mythological creature. It felt perfect for him. He's so out of it. Of course, he would understand that. Funny. I don't want to see him at just every single thing. I'd like for him to stay in like Tao Lo and just be a part of Shun-Chi's world, and that's where he is now. He wasn't in a lot of the film. He was just in that big chase scene when they go to Tao Lo, and they get one more cutaway shot to him playing dead. So I thought he was perfectly utilized. He was gonna get killed, but I guess I don't remember what he performed or something like that before he died, and they liked his performance, so they just locked him away. Yeah. Will the real Mandarin die? I believe I said no to this, but I was wrong. If anything, I thought he was going to die to Shang-Chi, but I love the way he died. Died almost like Darth Vader does. And again, the story reminisces a lot of Luke and Vader to me. And I love how like he passes on the baton, the reins to Shun-Chi. He's worthy. Very much a Mjolnir type of thing with Thor. Like he knew Shun-Chi was worthy. And I believe my guy Josh from the Den of Nerds kind of touched on it. Uh, he saw, in essence, he was back with his wife, the Mandarin, because Shun-Chi fought like his wife the first time that they met. And yeah, really, really, really beautiful. I thought it was fantastically. Yeah, that's the right word. Jeez, I'm all over the place. Sorry. I thought it was fantastically done. How, in essence, spiritually, he was with his wife again because he saw his wife within Shang-Chi. Her legacy lived on, so he felt it was appropriate to pass on the reins. I thought that was great. Will any of the main heroes die? None of them did. It's the first. I don't believe I said any would. It's the first movie in what is going to be a trilogy because the MCU does trilogies for all the characters that get movies. It just depends on how long it takes. So yeah, none of them died. Not surprised by that. Second or third one, maybe. Second one, third one, yeah, maybe. Will Shun-Chi become the new Mandarin and lead the Ten Rings organization? I was wrong, but I'm actually happy about what happened. Who is the new leader of the Ten Rings? Shun-Chi's sister. I cannot pronounce the name, so I'm just going to refer to her as Shun-Chi's sister. I'm sorry. I'm not good with name. I'm sorry. I'm just going to call her Shun-Chi's sister. Is it Jolene? I don't know. I'm not gonna try. But I love that end credit scene. I actually will get into that later. how I actually enjoyed the end credit scene, second one, more than I did the first one. First one has more implications, but the second one was way cooler. How Shunchi's sister has the flower emblem in the Ten Rings now. How she also adopted Tao Lo's way of training girls to be archers, to be fighters, just like the boys. They believe in equality, and now the Ten Rings do too. And I love how she's like, if I wasn't with my dad, I'd start my own empire, and she's literally doing that now. I'm not sure if she'll be a villain, but I'd like to see her be a pest in somebody's side. Maybe she gets her own Disney Plus show. I think that'd be really interesting to explore the integral aspects of Jalin. I hope that's how you pronounce it. Shunchi's sister's Ten Reigns and how it affects the rest of the world, while also having a Shang-Chi sequel where maybe Shang-Chi's got to deal with something that she did, or I'm not sure. But yeah, I thought Shang-Chi would become the new Mandarin. I was wrong. Who wins between Juan and Abomination? I said Juan. I was right. And it seems like Abomination and Juan are friends. I was told that it was going to be revealed what Abomination is up to. I don't know. He's just a fighter now. He looked very frightening. Um, but like I thought his future would be revealed. He was just like performing with Juan. Like I'm very confused about, did I miss something? Did I miss when he went through the portal? I'm not sure. But I I mean, come on now. I mean, Abomination is physically strong, but how are you going to beat somebody with like the power of the mystic arts? It's just not going to defeat my boy Juan. I mean, look, he had to leave Spider-Man No Way Home. He left the trailer. You know why? Because if Juan was in that movie is over in 5 minutes. Juan is the most powerful being. I'm joking. I'm joking, of course. But yeah, I'm not surprised that Juan won that fight. It just makes sense to me. Mystic arts versus just physical abilities. I would hope that Juan would win, but it doesn't seem like that they were trying to kill each other. Obviously, it was just a performance, just like WWE or whatever. It still requires physical strength and fighting and stuff, but it's more of an artistic fight, we'll say. Yeah. Will Shang-Chi get a sequel? Definitely. It outperformed at the box office. People love Simu Liu. I love Simu Liu. People love the character. People love the world. It's got positive vibes, positive energy. So I definitely think we'll get a sequel. When? The MCU is jam-packed right now. So it's like, if we're assuming that 2025 is that big climactic story event, which I think is Secret Wars and many other people do, does it become before or after? I'm going to say after. Feige probably already has it all planned out to Secret Wars. I could see Shang-Chi 2 being after Secret Wars, and then we'll get a 2 and 3 at some point. And the MCU is just so jam-packed with Disney Plus and now theaters, obviously. So, like, where does it go? I mean, we kind of already know what's happening until 2023 at least. We'll know 2024 here soon, I presume. So, yeah, it's jam-packed. I don't know where they're going to put it. When will Shang-Chi's next MCU appearance be? Doctor Strange 2, maybe? He's with Juan. I'm not sure. I would presumably say the next big team-up movie, maybe? So Secret Wars. Or his sequel, whenever that comes out. Or we see him in like a Disney Plus thing where I think they're going to explore the Ten Rings. Do we see Valentina in this movie? No, we didn't. And I'm happy about that because if I'm going to be honest with you guys, out of all the things happening in the MCU, stuff on Earth is like the least interesting. The stuff with Black Widow and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, why it is fascinating, all the stuff with Hawkeye and stuff. Yelena going after Hawkeye and presumably the Dark Avengers being formed. That's like the least interesting thing. We have a multiversal thing, and we have a secret invasion with the Skrulls. That's fascinating. And we have this cosmic thing with the Guardians still, Eternals, Thor, Gore the God Butcher, obviously, as the villain in that movie. So that's like the least interesting thing, the Earth stuff. So I'm glad we didn't see Valentina. I'm glad we're setting up other things. And again, I'm still probably going to like the Earthbound stuff, but the multiversal, cosmic side of the MCU far more interests me now than the Earthbound stuff. This movie was good. Shang-Chi, obviously, they did a lot with Earthbound stuff. But it also set up the fact of Shun-Chi being an adventurer, dealing with this multiversal and cosmic realm stuff that's going to happen here soon, presumably. So, yeah, the Earthbound stuff, not really hidden for me. My 14th is what would the end credit scene set up? I said it would set up Secret Invasion because I think it's one of the producers of Shun-Chi is working on Secret Invasion. So I'm like, oh, it's a connection. Maybe. But no, it doesn't appear like that at all. It basically just sets up what are the 10 rings, I guess. The 10 rings are something alien that Captain Marvel has never seen before. Okay. Technically, it is Secret Invasion. Now, hear me out. Secret Invasion is going to connect to the Marvels. So, Captain Marvel was in it. There you go. Now, I'm joking, of course. But, like, yeah, I really thought it was. I didn't know what it was going to set up. I should have just went with, oh, yeah, there's the 10 reigns. What the hell are those? That was the most logical thing, but I was thinking crazy. I'll get into that later, the end credit scene, but I'm disappointed. Not by the end credit scene itself, but something else that I'm going to talk about revolving around it. And my 15th question was your bold prediction. The Mandarin would be a top 10 villain. Exceeded. He was top 5. He hit all 3 of big check marks for me as a villain. Obviously, the connection to the character, father-son. I'm a sucker for that in movies. Father-son, really good. His power set, oh, he was badass with the 10 rings. He was very terrifying. And finally, his motives. Understood him. I understood him. If I understand your motives, I like you as a villain. Okay, that was it for my predictions. I did okay. This movie, I didn't know a lot about Shun-Chi, so it was kind of hard to predict. I got some things right, some things partially right, and some things wrong. That's all part of the speculation. We'll be doing that again for Venom within the next month. That got moved up. We're going to talk about that on Wednesday. But to continue with my topics here, we're going to do a deep dive here into spoilers for the next, I'll say 10 minutes. So, okay, let's dive deep here. Let's speculate a little bit. Okay. So let's talk about the Dweller. Okay, so the Dweller is a dark dimension being. I don't even know what they are. They were just crazy. That wanted to take over dimensions, and they had taken over some, but they were locked away in this dimension, Ta Lo, trying to get to our dimension. But they failed, obviously, because of Shun-Chi and the Great Protector, which I gotta say, Shun-Chi's suit made out of a dragon scale. That was awesome. I loved his suit. I love that. And him riding it, great. I didn't need to see the dragon fight thing, but like, again, sucker for mythological stuff. So I really enjoyed that mythological dragon duel. It wasn't great, but like, I could have gone without it, but I really enjoyed it. So that was all over the place. I apologize, but I liked it. Let's just keep it at that. Yeah, and I really enjoyed the final fight. I want to kind of dive deeper into that final fight. I love an intimidated villain that also has motives we understand. And I love how in that first fight in Ta Lo, Shun-Chi fights a lot like his dad. Aggressive, villainous. You're not going to beat power with power. Defense always wins championships, right? Shun-Chi learns to become defensive. That second fight, like his mother, peaceful. Doesn't fight with the fist, fights with the open hand. That first fight is really good. You think Shun-Chi's going to get it done, like he's pounded on his dad, and then his dad uses the 10 reins and he shows him who's boss. It's almost like the Mandarin was like toying with him. I'm not sure if he was, but like. I just loved how it mirrors perfectly to Luke and Vader, how Luke is just aggressive. He's using the dark side to try to defeat his dad. You can't defeat evil with evil. That's what Shunchi thought. He was so hell-bent on killing his dad that he forgot the lessons his mother told him. So I thought that was really fascinating. Their final fight, the first time, and then we think, oh, Shun-Chi is dead. And the Mandarin, you look at his face, and he probably does have remorse, but he believes he had to do it to get his wife back. And then that second fight, ooh, I loved it. How Shun-Chi fights like his mom, and his dad loses some of the reins. He loses five, so it was a 5-on-5. And I love how the reins change color. They change color to Shun-Chi's, the color that they wore when Shun-Chi's mom met the Mandarin, that yellowish color. And I love that final fight. The Mandarin has been training his whole life to become worthy, almost like Thor. Thor was worthy of Mjolnir. Shun-Chi became worthy of the 10 Rings. And I really enjoyed that final fight. I especially love it when we think that Shun-Chi's down for the count, but then he has all the 10 Rings. And then the Mandarin gets him back, and he's about to get killed. And Shun-Chi's like, I got to go and help him. But the Mandarin realizes, oh, I can be at peace now. My wife is with me because I see my child within the wife. Yeah, I don't know if that made sense. But to further explain the point, the Mandarin saw his wife within Shang-Chi. He saw her ideals, the pacifist. He was proud of his son because he became the very thing that he loved, the only thing that he loved, his wife. And yeah, I thought that final fight was fantastic. And another character now I want to get into is Shun-Chi's sister. She was a little underused. I understood it wasn't her story, but she is very compelling. She might even be more badass than Shun-Chi. I'd like to see her maybe go after the 10 Rings herself, be a little power hungry. Like kind of set up in the sequel that like she's kind of resentful of Shun-Chi. I mean, that line that she has in the apartment complex or the fighting arena, where she talks about how she would create her own empire even without her dad. She literally is doing that. She's like, oh, I'm going to clean up the 10 Rings. But no, she wants it for her own. And I wonder what type of ideals she keeps. She seems more, she loves her mom, but she seems more like the dad in the sense that she's very power hungry. Again, I really think that there could be a Disney Plus series exploring the 10 Rings, maybe exploring more of Tony Leon's The Mandarin, but also exploring how how Shang-Chi's sister deals with being the leader of the 10 Rings. What does she do now? Is it an organization for good? Is it in the middle? Or is it just full on evil still? We'll have to wait and see. Is she just training assassins to take down governments like the Mandarin? Like, what is going on there? I find that very compelling. I think she's very even threatening to Shun-Chi. I love her story as well. In the background, she sees all the men training, but she can't fight. Um, and then she teaches herself, and she even becomes stronger than most of the men. And she could beat Shun-Chi, presumably. Like, she could probably beat Shun-Chi 5 out of 10 times, and he could beat her 5 out of 10 times. Consider them very even. They're probably two of the best hand-to-hand combat fighters we have in the MCU. So I think her story is really interesting. The first act, I love I love the fight on the bus. All the action that's going on. I love the guy that's filming. That was funny. That killed it in the theater. Um, yeah, I really enjoyed Razor Fist and the fights, the close choreography, the soundtrack. That was all really good. I also love the fight in the apartment. I don't know what the guy's name is, but the one with the mask, he has a white mask, and I can't remember what the character's name is. I should have been prepared, but he had a white mask, and he was the one who trained Shun-Chi, and I love that fight. We see that Shun-Chi, like lost repeatedly to him, but after that, he won. You know, he won this fight in the apartment or like fighting complex, which was really cool. I really enjoyed Um, really enjoyed that aspect. I don't know. I can't figure out what that character's name is. Does somebody? I don't know. Uh, yeah, but anyways, I again, there was nothing plot wise that I didn't like. Again, the second act is slow, but that's more of a story thing, nothing to do with the plot. I thought the character moments were good in that second act, but plot wise, I don't have any complaints. Again, that was just my little spoiler reaction to the movie. And I will also add that the 10 Reigns is probably right up there with Mjolnir as power sets. You can use them as almost as like an energy beam that shoots out. You can like shoot them at people. You can do crazy things with them. I don't even like. They're one of the more cool things in the MCU. And I know some people are hell bent on keeping things comic accurate, but if it looks like that and it's not what it was in the comics, I am not going to complain at all. And I haven't seen really any people complain at all. Actually, if you just looked at it on premise, I would have picked what's in the movie 10 times out of 10. It wasn't confusing. The power sets were clear, they were cool, and it establishes you as a badass if you have them. Okay, so it's my deep dive into some of the spoilers. Okay, it's time to give my end credit scene theories. So I kind of would go with the more simple one, the straightforward one at the end. I think Xiaolin is taking over the 10 Reigns, obviously. And I think she'd be more of an anti hero. She won't be a villain, but I think they could set her up in a Shun-Chi trilogy to be the final villain that Shun-Chi has to fight. Again, I'd love a Disney Plus show with her exploring her character more because I find her character fascinating. It's almost like the Gamora and Nebula thing, where Gamora is the more front center, Nebula's here on the side. I want more with Nebula. Just like I want more with Xiaolin. I want to see what she does with the 10 Reigns. I want to just see more of the 10 Reigns. Um, Obviously, we had the 10 Reigns. Um, throughout the MCU. So I wanted like see what they're up to at this point because they're like it's kind of weird. Like we've had 10 years of them presumably just around in the MCU and they've really done nothing. We know that they captured Stark and stuff, but yeah, I'd like to see them explore more post Endgame. And just even flashbacks with Tony Leon's The Mandarin would be really cool in a 10 Reigns Disney Plus show. Like they said, the 10 Reigns will return. So I'd love to see a Disney Plus thing, like The Legend of the 10 or the 10 Reigns organization or something like that. I don't know. I'm not good at naming stuff. So yeah, I definitely think that's maybe sets up a Disney Plus project and it might set up Xiaolin having more of a future as the villain of the Shang-Chi trilogy, the big villain that comes up. And then we'll go to the first end credit scene. Okay, so let's talk about what does it set up for the MCU moving forward. So there's a couple of theories that I've heard, and I want to talk about both of them. The first one is that we know that the 10 Reigns are thousands of years old. We know they're older than the Mandarin who had him for 1,000 years. They use the word eternal. It's 10 Reigns, there's 10 Eternals. I think it'd be really interesting if they go the route that this kind of sets up the Eternals. But then again, like Fastos, who I believe is the engineer of the Eternals, created them. But then again, I don't know how it would set up. Like, why would that beacon, you know, why would that beacon matter to them? Like, why would that be the thing that calls to them? I'm not 100% positive on that, but I think that is a interesting and good theory. With the Eternals, maybe it's like their signal that the Deviants are coming. That somehow the 10 Rings can sense when a deviant threat is coming to Earth. Maybe that's what the 10 Rings power set is. Just besides it being like almost an energy beam type of thing, so that would be really interesting. And the other theory is that it's Fin Fein Foom. I believe it's like an alien race that is like can transform into dragons, can morph into dragons. Carol says that it's nothing she's ever seen before. It's not Chitari. It's not made of vibranium. And Carol's been around the universe presumably now for 20 something years. So she can go all around anywhere she wants to. So I'm not 100% sure what it could be myself. I think it'd be interesting to set up Fin Fame Foom and the dragons. We saw the Great Protector, and we saw the Dweller. So I think that is the more logical thing, in my opinion. Again, setting up this alien race of dragons that we could see maybe in a show like or a movie like the Marvels. Maybe set them up for Shang-Chi like we saw Carol. Again, Carol leaving is just like a signal to me that, oh, this is her leaving for whatever's happening in the Marvels. So, yeah, again, one or two things either sets up the Eternals, but I don't know how. I could see it very well being the Eternals, but it's not a gold color like most of their equipment or most of their tools that they use. Their artifacts. So I don't think it's the Eternals. I think it more likely probably Fin Fame Foom or something else that I don't know. I think it'd be cool to see this dragon alien race because I'm not sure who would be the villain of Shang-Chi too. It could be just another random thing, but I think it would make more sense if that end credit scene set up Shang-Chi's next big villain, or maybe it's the first setup to something crazier that we don't know about. Doctor Doom. I don't know. Probably not. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Fin Fame Foom. Probably wrong. It probably will be the Eternals, but that's what I'm going to say out of the two big theories I've seen about them. How's over Galactus? Why would they introduce Galactus now? It makes no sense. We already have Kane the Conqueror. That's gonna be the big villain of this phase. All right, so Shun-Chi 2 is my last topic. Do I think he gets one? A sequel? Yes. When? Probably post 2025, post Secret Wars. I think the MCU slate is probably already. Feige knows what he's doing 5 years out. So I think he already knows what he wants to do until that big Avengers team up movie. Again, I know Secret Wars hasn't been announced, but I think that's the next big thing they're planning towards. And I don't see where Shun-Chi could fit, maybe in the later half of 2023 or 2024, but I think you should save until after Secret Wars. But then again, you can have a show called the Ten Rings Organization with Xiaolin, and I think that would be very interesting because I want to see her character explored more. So that is going to wrap it up today for my Shun-Chi Legend of the Ten Rings review. I want to thank you all for coming and watching. Yeah, I'm really excited. I will be back Wednesday to talk about Venom getting moved up. The main topic will be what if. I'll talk about some Book of Boba Fett news. I'll also talk about some Charlie Cox news for She-Hulk. And I can't remember the last thing I'm going to talk about, but there'll probably be something else that comes out in the next 2 days that I'll talk about. So anyways, I want to thank you all again for coming on. If you're watching this on replay, thank you. If you watch this live, thank you. I appreciate it. Until next time, see you all then. May the force be with you.